As the sponsor of A1, which was marriage equality in the New Jersey General Assembly, without question I embrace enacting laws that will provide marriage equality. I do not believe this is a question for the referendum. I think that the majority should never have the right to determine outcomes for the minority. This is an issue to be dealt with in the legislature, and if the governor doesn't acquiesce, we replace the governor.
Rebuttal. Congressman Pallone.
Well, let me say this. Mayor Booker keeps talking about his close relationship with Governor Christie, well, and how he can reach across the aisle. Well, why doesn't he use that relationship to try to get the governor to support marriage equality? I hear over and over again how he's able to get Governor Christie to get things done. Well, this is certainly one where he did not.
WHYY's Eugene Sano has a question for Congressman Holt.
While New Jersey is not rich in natural gas deposits like its neighbors of Pennsylvania and New York, whether to allow drilling and fracking is a big issue for anyone in the Delaware River Basin. A lot of people in New Jersey get their drinking water from the Delaware River. Do you feel that fracking, as it's now regulated, is safe for our water supplies, and should it be Washington or the states regulating this?
I think that the stampede to frack for natural gas has gotten way ahead of the science, way ahead of the understanding. We need a moratorium now. It is essential that we preserve our water, our clean air, the lands we cherish. I'm pleased to say that of all members of Congress, not just the ones here, I have the highest environmental rating, according to the League of Conservation Voters, over my entire career. This is important to me. It's important to New Jerseyans. The mayor said, well, we can't do anything in a bipartisan way in Congress. In a bipartisan way, I got the Delaware River designated as a scenic river. Part of that is to preserve the water that flows into the Delaware River. And keeping fracking under control is essential to that. Furthermore, it is a greenhouse gas emitting fuel.
Time, thank you. Mayor Booker, your response.
Yeah, I agree with the congressperson on this. We don't even know right now the truth and the science behind fracking and what it's doing to our environment. They've made exceptions from the Clean Water Act, so-called Halliburton exception. That's unacceptable to me. And actually, methane is more damaging to our environment than CO2, and there's tremendous amount of methane that is released here. We need to not allow fracking in the state of New Jersey. We need to take steps to make sure that it is subject to the Clean Water Act and make sure that we go forward in investing in renewables in our state.
Speaker Oliver.
Yes, this is an issue we've dealt with many times in the state legislature. I do believe that this should be the purview of the states. I believe that each state is different, the geography, the environment, and I do not believe the U.S. Senate or the House of Representatives should address the issue, because at a state level, we have the opportunity to have broader control on not allowing fracking. And you know, in New Jersey, they say no friggin' fracking.
Congressman Pallone.
I'm very much opposed to fracking, primarily because of the impact on clean water. And I would like to use my efforts to clean up the ocean and talk about the environment as a way of sort of highlighting my opposition to what Mayor Booker says, which is that you can't get things done in Congress. In fact, when I was first elected, we closed all the ocean dumping sites to clean up the Jersey Shore. And I also worked with Senator Lautenberg to pass legislation, brownfields and Superfund funding that would clean up toxic waste sites. So you can get things done in Congress.
Rebuttal, Congressman Holt.
As I was starting to say, and as the mayor referred to, this production of natural gas, the methane in natural gas, hurts the environment. It is a greenhouse gas. When it's burned, it creates carbon dioxide, and the methane that is released is itself a greenhouse gas. So we've gotten way ahead of the science here. We've got to pull in the reins.
The next question comes from News 12 New Jersey's Luke Margolis for Mayor Booker.
Mayor Booker, let's talk about health care. The rollout of the Affordable Care Act has been a mixed bag so far. Standing in the way have been some Republican governors who have opposed the law, in some cases by dragging their feet on things like opening exchanges. What do you think should be done to speed its implementation?
Well, first of all, I want to disagree with a bit of the premise. This law has expanded access for so many Americans, so many here in the state of New Jersey. It's allowed us to eliminate this pre-existing conditions that many people were denied insurance in the first place. It's helped young people to stay on their parents' insurance longer. And even as we're seeing in states like New York, it's actually lowering premiums and lowering costs. So what we should be doing right now is fighting to make sure the implementation goes smoothly. That's why I support what the president's doing, but also fighting against the attacks that you're seeing from Republicans, as you said, that are governors, as well as the Republicans in Congress, who have now voted 40 times for the repeal of this act. So we should be pushing forward to make sure it's a sensible implementation to help and serve many people. And then we need to go further as well, to begin to control costs and make sure that the cost of health care comes down by eliminating doctors' abilities to do unnecessary tests and start to pay them for outcomes. There's many things we can do to protect not only health care for Americans, but Medicaid and Medicare as well.
Speaker Oliver, your response.
Yes, I believe that the Affordable Care Act is right for New Jersey. We have 1.3 million uninsured people in our state. The Affordable Care Act will give access to health care for those citizens. I think that the healthcare system in this country is extremely complicated. It is intricate. There is a lot of stakeholders. We have to root out fraud and waste. I should not be able to have to go to Belgium for a hip replacement because it's $15,000, but $78,000 in the United States.
Congressman Pallone, your response.
Well, I want to say that the Affordable Care Act is an example, again, of how Congress can get things done. And I helped write it with President Obama. I'm very proud of the fact that it's going to cover most Americans with a good benefit package and also eliminate preconditions as a basis for getting health care and be affordable. But again, you know, the mayor keeps saying that we don't do anything in Congress. We did. And he had an opportunity with the Hyacinth Foundation where federal money was coming in to help AIDS and HIV victims, and they never got paid until I got involved.
Congressman Holt.
As one of the other authors, another author of the Affordable Care Act, I think it is good. It is much improved over what existed before it was passed. But with the Affordable Care Act, even when it's fully implemented, it will still be complicated. There will still be tens of millions of people outside the fold who should be included. It will still not have the check on escalating costs that we need. So we should go to universal single-payer health care. In other words, Medicare for all. The other side will say that's impractical. I say we shouldn't lower our sights.
Rebuttal, Mayor Booker.
Sure. The question was about health care, and it's unfortunate that it seems like Congressman Pallone wants to talk about me more tonight than the actual issues and what's affecting you. We have to do a lot more work to protect Medicaid, to protect Medicare. We need leadership that's going to defend these programs, but also advance them so that they're secure and there, not just for the seniors now, but our children and our children's children.
Next question, Andrew Meyer has for Speaker Oliver.
Speaker, during his long tenure in Congress, Senator Frank Lautenberg was responsible for a remarkable body of legislation. What, in your opinion, is his single greatest legacy, and what is the single most important piece of action you'd want to realize in the 1 year left in his term that would serve as a tribute to that legacy?
I think that Congressman Pallone has done phenomenal work for our coastline. You know, one of the reasons we're all concerned about Sandy is because the tourist industry at the Jersey Shore is a $38 billion economic engine for this state. Had Congressman Pallone not committed to federal legislation to clean up our shore, to enact clean water legislation, and to make certain that appropriations came to do beach replenishment, we would not have that $38 billion driving New Jersey's economy. So I think that Pallone will always be remembered for that work. In terms of what remains on Senator Lautenberg's, because you did make reference to Lautenberg, you said Pallone, but you may have meant Lautenberg. What Pallone should do for the remainder of the term is continuing his work in fighting for the little man.
Congressman Pallone.
Well, I want to thank Speaker Oliver for what she said about what I've accomplished in trying to continue Senator Lautenberg's legacy. I think she's on point with some of the legislation that Senator Lautenberg was attempting to pass and still could be passed. First, there's the Beaches Act, which I have in the House and we're trying to move, that basically would have better testing methods for beaches and provide money to clean up some of the sources of ocean pollution. Also, the Superfund legislation. We need to reauthorize the Superfund legislation, and he was a big advocate for that.
Congressman Rush Holt.
Frank Lautenberg was a great fighter for New Jerseyans. He dealt with substance, not celebrity. He helped in public health and any number of other things. What he did with the drunk driving legislation as a public health issue, you could fill stadiums with people who are alive today because of what he did, and they don't know who they are. What I want to do is continue what he and I were working on at the time he died, which is the Tyler Clementi anti-bullying legislation. So we don't have tragedies such as Tyler, who killed himself because of the harassment and bullying.
Thank you. Mayor Booker.
Thank you. I want to agree with my colleagues. Obviously, our Senator Lautenberg was a champion for our state. Everything from what he did with getting smoking off airplanes to the last thing he was fighting for, which is a Chemical Safety Act to make sure that the consumer products that we use are actually safe for ourselves, our families, and our children. But what it really stands out as a distinction to me is that that Senator Pallone, not Senator Pallone, Senator Lautenberg, I'm making the same mistake again, was somebody that fought in every stage of his life. He's the last World War II veteran that actually fought for that left the Congress.
Rebuttal. Speaker Oliver.
Yes. What made Senator Lautenberg a great senator was the fact that he never forgot where he came from. And he had walked with kings and queens, but he still had the common touch. I think it is important for New Jersey's next U.S. senator to never forget that. You walk with kings and queens.
Time.
And you maintain the common touch.
The next question from Eugene Son goes to Congressman Pallone.
Congressman, candidates for Congress and Senate have been talking for at least 2 decades about fixing Social Security. All that time of inaction means any sort of action that will be taken will have to be more drastic than it might have been. What can you do to forge a bill that would actually get through Congress and to the president's desk rather than something that people grandstand on as a campaign that will address the shortcomings of Social Security?
Well, first of all, let me stress that I have systematically been protective of Social Security, and I fought very hard against President Bush's effort to privatize it, which I think was a mistake. I do not believe that we should cut benefits under Social Security. I think that would be a huge mistake. I think the answer, and I also don't believe we should raise the retirement age. So I think what we really need to do is to make sure that we shore up the trust fund, and that can be done in part by growing the economy, where people will pay more into the trust fund as they work, but even more so looking at some ways of adjusting, for example, the payroll tax to get rid of the cap where the wealthier people don't pay. So we need to bring more revenue into the fund. Now, I will point out that Mayor Booker has his position on Social Security is very unclear. At various times he said he wanted to cut it, he wanted to raise the retirement age, and later he said he didn't. So, you know, if you're looking for someone who's going to be 100% supportive of shoring up Social Security and keeping the benefits the way they are, I would urge you to vote for me.
Congressman Holt, your response.
Social Security is one of the most important programs in the history of this country, and we have to keep it strong. I've already said tonight that what we should do is make sure that millionaires pay the same Social Security tax rate as everybody else. Not say, oh, yeah, we ought to think about that. I'm saying do it. That is part of my progressive vision. Now, Mr. Pallone made reference to Mayor Booker's position on this. Before the Bergen record, he said we should reduce benefits for young workers, or rather, he will consider reducing benefits for young workers.
Time, thank you. Mayor Cory Booker.
They're still talking about me. I want to talk about you. They're muddling my record. We need to protect Social Security. We need to stand against cuts, against risky schemes of privatization, anything that's going to reduce benefits. But I do think the question was on point. This is yet another example of how inaction in Congress is making problems worse for our community. And so whether it's the Jobs Act, whether it's infrastructure investment, whether it's actually doing more for early childhood and our kids, Congress is not getting it done. It's a broken system, and we need change agents there.
Speaker Sheila Oliver.
Yes, Social Security is not broken. If you will read the 2013 report that was issued by the trustees of the Social Security Trust, you will see it is not broken. We know that as we move towards 2030, if there are not certain things that we move forward and address, we might potentially have difficulty. Currently, the trust funds funded up at about 77-78%. We know that there are ebbs and tides in terms of the investments that we make. It's not broken.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Congressman Frank Pallone.
Well, again, I want to stress that that Mayor Booker has not been consistent on this issue and many times has suggested that he's willing to cut Social Security. And I will also stress, you know, he's very much aligned with Wall Street. He gets significant amount of money from Wall Street and Bain Capital. And this is exactly what the president was talking about. President Bush wanted to invest money in Wall Street. What will he do?
Thank you. Next question from Luke Margolis to Congressman Holt.
Congressman Holt, you mentioned climate change earlier in the debate. Recent polling on this issue, though, seems to suggest that many voters, not all but many, no longer worry about the effects of climate change on our planet. How much effort should we as a country be expending on this issue when many voters no longer view it as an emerging priority?
I'm not sure what poll you're talking about. I doubt if they asked the people in South River, if they asked the people in Little Ferry, if they asked the people up and down the Jersey Shore. New Jerseyans don't need more reminders that climate change is real, that it is expensive and costly in lives and dollars. We shouldn't act as if we just don't know what to do. We know that humans are to blame. We know that it is killing people today and will only get worse, and that there are things we can do about it. Climate change can be addressed, and we should start by restricting the emission of the greenhouse gases. A carbon tax, as I talked about, will help with that. And then we have to talk about how we're going to rebuild the shore. Now, in the few seconds that are left, I really should finish my last thought about Social Security. The mayor said before the Bergen Record Board of Editors in a long interview, he would consider reducing benefits on Social Security.
John,
that's not new
thank you.
politics. That's Republican
Thank you.
politics.
Mayor Booker, your response.
Yes, we've seen time and time again 100-year storms coming by and through our state with increasing regularity. There's a consensus of scientists that know that we are seeing climate change. And we cannot wait to act. This situation is getting more and more difficult to solve the longer we go without doing something. In Washington right now is needed action. Investment in alternative fuels, investment in research and development, investment in the kind of things that help us to not only create jobs, but reduce our carbon output. The solutions are there. What we need right now is action in Washington.
Speaker Oliver.
The question was polling. The question was, why do citizens not prioritize this? I believe that is generational. It's intergenerational. Younger people who have been educated in a different way, who have had the benefit of science incorporated into their curriculums, K-12, have a broad understanding of the issue. You said, why don't voters believe that this is a priority? Young people who are very well addressed at this issue don't vote.
Congressman Pallone, your response.
I don't know about the polling, but I will say this. I think that the atmosphere is increasingly ripe in Washington to try to do something about climate change. The president just came out with a proposal to reduce carbon emissions, to do more in terms of preparing for future storms, like the flood control projects, and also for trying to get us to agree to something like the Kyoto Treaty, which should be ratified. So I think if we reach out now to Republicans on both sides of the aisle, that we can actually affect some legislation to address climate change.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Congressman Holt.
I have to agree with the other speakers here, except to re-emphasize that the time is ripe to do something about this. We cannot avoid that. As a scientist, I like to deal with the facts. That makes it possible to get things done in Washington, if you agree on the facts rather than coming from your ideological corners.
The next question from WBGO's Andrew Meyer goes to Mayor Booker.
Mayor, when it comes to the arts and the humanities, it's been well documented that they're major economic drivers. Do you support continued funding for the National Endowments for the Arts and the Humanities? And if so, what more will you be willing to do as a senator to ensure that they get the support they deserve and, in the interest of full disclosure, WBGO does receive some funding from the NEA.
Right. Well, I think WBGO's funding is something I'll fight for. As a mayor of a city, we know that arts drives economic development. Right now, we're going through one of our biggest housing booms in Newark in a long time because of the thriving art cultures. From everything from NJPAC to our small art galleries, we're seeing that happening, and frankly, all across our state. Towns like Red Banks and others are showing when we support the arts, we create jobs and economic opportunity. And that's why, as a United States Senator, I will not only stand up to defend the funding for the NEA and other arts projects, but I want to look for more creative ways within our cities in New Jersey, Camden, Atlantic City, Trenton, and others to find ways that we support artistic endeavor. Because what we've seen in the city of Newark is that when you focus on the arts, not as some afterthought, but really make it center to life, that you can create economic abundance.
Speaker Oliver, your response.
Absolutely, 100% committed to arts funding and have participated in groups like the Newark Arts Council and other statewide entities. But here is where I'm going to differ with Mayor Booker. When this governor closed down New Jersey Network and its arts programming, part of that operation headquartered in Newark, he did nothing. Newark Museum had to cut its education program. I fought in the state legislature to get a $1 million appropriation to keep them alive. I have demonstrated my commitment to the arts in New Jersey.
Congressman Pallone, your response.
Well, let me say, first of all, I want to agree with Speaker Oliver that we keep hearing over and over again from Mayor Booker about all the things he's doing in Newark. Yet we know that many times, and she talked about some of the arts. We've seen closures or cutbacks, and he hasn't done anything about it, or oftentimes is supportive of the governor, who actually has withdrawn a lot of funding from the cities, not only for the arts, but for many other things like police and firefighters and teachers. And so I don't see how that relationship has been helpful to the arts.
Congressman Holt.
One of the foremost fighters in Congress for the National Endowment for the Arts, every year on the floor arguing for that. And so I'm pleased to say in this race I've been supported by the Americans for the Arts. A year or so ago I received the top award from the New Jersey Art Teachers Association. I've received the highest award from the Alliance for the Humanities because of my work in arts and humanities. And I personally commission works of art in
Rebuttal,
my
Booker.
work.
Sure. I'm a little surprised to hear Speaker Oliver and others say that we haven't fought for the arts in Newark. I could take anybody on a tour, including the 15-acre park we just opened up with public arts projects and our city's biggest mural right there. We've raised millions of private dollars to make up for where the state fell short, and actually the federal government as well. So we have an incredible record here in Newark. I hope they come on a tour and see what's happening in the state's biggest city.
Okay, it's time for closing statements here in our debate. We've run out of time for our questions. And by the draw that we had earlier at WBGO, Congressman Holt, you are first. You have 45 seconds.
Thanks. A campaign should help citizens focus on the future and understand the choice in front of them. And I'm afraid this year's election campaign has not. Unfortunately, we're not getting, the candidates, or at least one of them, are not leveling with us. I think Mayor Booker has some explaining to do. I think he should address the points that were raised in the New York Times yesterday about his inviting business moguls to give him a company, about his running the company while he was supposedly a full-time mayor, about his failure to disclose his largest asset in the financial disclosure statement, and his giving stock options to a 14-year-old son of the head of CNN.
Time.
I would like to hear what he has to say.
Congressman Frank Pallone.
Thank you, Doug. I think you can see a clear difference between the candidates tonight. You have one candidate who's aligned with Wall Street and tech millionaires and is running around the country basically putting together this internet startup that he will benefit from rather than dealing with the problems in Newark and not even being in Newark at least 20% of the time. On the other hand, I've been working for a long time to help working families and the little guy. That's what Senator Lautenberg was all about, and I'm very proud of the fact that I received Senator Lautenberg's family endorsement because of the fact that I'm trying to make a difference in Congress and getting things done. You can get things done in Congress if you work hard. That's the Lautenberg legacy. And I would ask that on Tuesday, August 13th, you cast your vote for me for U.S. Senator.
Newark Mayor Cory Booker.
It's obvious that my opponents tonight came to attack me, but I again want to get back to talking about you and the facts. But I have to point this out. We have 2 Congress people that voted to deregulate the banks and contribute to our financial collapse. And we fought in Newark to create the biggest jobs boom there was. We have 2 Congress people that failed to get a jobs bill passed and have our unemployment rate go up across our state, but we fought in Newark to create economic opportunity like it's never been seen. We have 2 Congress people who admitted tonight they voted for the Patriot Act, and elements of it show that we're spying, in my opinion, doing an unfettered invasion of New Jersey's citizens' privacy rights. Time and time again, Congress has failed to act. We've had 40 years of congressional experience here between the 2 gentlemen, and they haven't got it done. It's time for us to put new energy and change agents in Washington. I hope to be your United States Senator.
And State Assembly Speaker Sheila Oliver gets the final word from the candidates tonight. 45 seconds.
To the citizens of New Jersey, you have an opportunity to elect a U.S. Senator who will always tell you the truth, who will always be willing to swim upstream when the current is going the other way, and who will always prioritize what is best for you and your families. There is no issue that confronts our state that I don't have familiarity with. I have spent a career in every imaginable sector. I have knowledge that will extend the length and breadth of the state and grappling problems on Capitol Hill. I have not been dealing with just a 9-member municipal council. I deal with a state legislature, and I have the ability to foster inclusion.
Candidates, we want to thank you very much for joining us tonight here at WBGO and your cooperation throughout the planning of this event. A big thanks to all of our partners. News 12 New Jersey, you guys are great. And WHYY, thank you so much for being a part of this debate. The fantastic production crew of WBGO includes Duke Marcos, our studio engineer, Jeremy Sterone, our timer, David Antoine, our station engineer, David Talixon, VP of Operations. We also want to thank the talented crew of News 12 New Jersey for making this event possible on television. I'm Doug Doyle, and I'm reminding you that the primary polls open at 6 a.m. in New Jersey and close at 8 p.m. next Tuesday night, August 13th. So we want to thank you for listening and watching the Democratic U.S. Senate debate. We want all of you to have a pleasant evening.